The palace was silent. The once mighty warrior lay beneath layers of blankets, yet he could not get warm. This was King David, the giant slayer, the psalmist, the conqueror, now frail, now fading, now cold. And into that room stepped a young woman. Her name was Abishag. She did not enter as a queen. She did not enter as a wife. She entered as warmth. She lay beside a king, yet scripture tells us something curious. The king knew her not. And after a few brief verses, the text goes quiet. Who was she? Why was she chosen? What became of her? This is the quiet story of the girl who entered the king's chamber and then disappeared between the lines of history. The story unfolds in the first book of Kings, chapter 1. David is old, very old. The man who once stands before the ark now cannot regulate his body heat. Servants pile garments upon him. Still, he shivers. This is not merely physical weakness. It is symbolic. The golden era is ending. The throne is vulnerable. Succession is uncertain. In ancient courts, when a king grew weak, ambition awakened, the palace atmosphere would have been tense. Whispers in corridors, eyes watching, calculations forming, and in that fragile moment, the servants propose a solution. Let a young virgin be sought for my lord the king, and let her lie in his arms, that my lord the king may be warm. It sounds strange to modern ears, but in that cultural setting, body heat was a medical practice, a living blanket, a human warmth. So they searched the land, and they found Abishag the Shunammite. Abishag came from Shunma village far from Jerusalem's grandeur. She was described simply as very beautiful, but beauty, in Scripture, often carries both opportunity and danger. She did not apply for palace service. She was chosen, taken from ordinary life and placed into extraordinary proximity to power. Imagine the journey, leaving her home, her family, her familiar surroundings, escorted into the royal chambers, and there she sees him, the legendary King David, older, frail, diminished. This was not the warrior of songs. This was mortality. She became his attendant. She served him. She lay beside him. But the text emphasizes, the king knew her not. There was no intimacy, no romance, no consummation. She entered the most intimate room in the kingdom, yet remained untouched. While Abishag warmed the king's body, the kingdom trembled with ambition. David's son Adonijah declared himself king. Chariots gathered, supporters aligned. The palace was splitting before David's life had even ended, and Abishag was there, in the room, beside the man whose throne was being contested. She would have seen the weakness, heard the whispers, felt the tension, yet her voice is never recorded. She is present but silent, a witness to history. A figure standing at the intersection of fading glory and rising power. Eventually, Bathsheba and the prophet Nathan intervened to secure the throne for Solomon. David declared, Solomon king. The transition began, and Abishag remained in the background. David died, Solomon reigned, and the text could have ended there for Abishag, but her name surfaces once more, Adonijah, the would-be king who failed, approached Bathsheba with a request. Ask King Solomon to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. On the surface, it sounds simple, a marriage proposal. But in ancient royal culture, to take a former king's concubine Even one not fully consummated was a claim to his authority. Possession of the king's women symbolized claim to his throne. When Solomon heard the request, his response was swift and fierce. And why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also. Solomon recognized the political symbolism. Abishag was not merely a girl, she represented proximity to kingship, power, legitimacy. Adonijah's request cost him his life. And once again, the text grows quiet about her. Abishag never wore a crown, yet her presence carried weight. She was close to David's final days. Her name was tied to succession politics. She became a symbol in royal power struggles, and yet we never hear her thoughts, her fears, her desires. She is introduced, described, positioned, and then left in silence. Perhaps that silence speaks. Not every life in Scripture is fully explained. Some stories are fragments, and those fragments invite reflection. Abishag's story raises deep questions. What does it mean to be near greatness yet remain unnamed in its outcomes? To enter the king's room yet not be written into his legacy? To be present at pivotal moments yet have your voice unrecorded, and yet she is remembered, her name preserved, her identity not erased. She was seen by God even if not celebrated by history. Sometimes our lives intersect with great movements of destiny, and our role is not center stage but faithful presence. She warmed a king. She witnessed transition. She became a symbol of authority. And then she faded from the narrative, but not from Scripture. Picture the dim royal chamber, an aging king wrapped in blankets, a young woman seated beside him, offering warmth and silence. Outside the room, kingdoms shift. Inside the room, history breathes its last with a shepherd king. Abishag entered the king's room. She stood at the edge of power. She became part of a political storm. And then the text goes quiet. No resolution, no marriage story, no dramatic ending, just a name. Sometimes God writes stories not with loud conclusions but with quiet significance. Abishag reminds us, you may enter rooms others only dream about. You may stand beside greatness. You may witness transitions that shape generations. And even if the world forgets to finish your story, God never forgets your name. She entered the king's room, and the text went quiet, but heaven still remembers.